Welcome to the chalkboard, my fellow football nerds, for episode number 183 of Chalk Talk. I am your host, Shane Haff, and you can follow me on Twitter at ShaneHaffNFL. I'm joined today by the best co-host in the game. You've heard him on the Tough Cover radio show. It is Mark Henry Jr. Give him a follow on Twitter at MarkHenryJr_. Mark, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I think I'll have my podcast studio set up behind me, not the Christmas tree soon. We got a new addition to the podcast studio, so let's build up the suspense for next week. Next week we debut my new addition to the podcast studio.
All right. Mark putting there's a lot of meaningless games in week 18, but our podcast will not be meaningless. You got to tune in and see Mark's new addition to the podcast studio. I'm on the edge of my seat, more so than I will be for some of the week 18 games. And Mark, as we recap week 17, and apologies to the listeners for missing week 16. It was crazy with all the holiday travel and things, but man, we took 1 week off and I totally forgot what days the NFL even plays on anymore. There's Wednesday games, Thursday games, Saturday games, like Sunday, Monday. It's crazy. So we're going to try to recap it all. We're going to start, as we always do, with the NFC East, and then we'll go through Sunday, and then we'll backstep through the week to the games that happened several days ago that we'll give our take on, but you guys have already had plenty of time to process those. And so let's dive in the NFC East. And let's start with the New York Giants with the number one overall pick on the line. Drew Lock went 17 of 23 for 309 yards and 4 touchdowns. He scrambled for another. His 1.18 EPA per play is the sixth best single game performance of any quarterback since 1999, per Doug Analytics on Twitter. Malik Neighbors had 7 catches for 171 yards and 2 touchdowns in this game as the Giants win 45-33. And with the playoffs on the line, the Colts gave up 45 points to a Giants offense that was averaging 14.4 points per game. So disaster class really for both teams, honestly. This was the Giants' first home win of the season in their last home game, and it cost them number 1 overall. So that's got to sting as Giants fans. I would imagine Giants fans were probably rooting against their team yesterday. I don't know for sure, but they do have Tyrone Tracy and Malik Neighbors became the third NFL rookie duo in NFL history to have 1,000 or more scrimmage yards in the same season. Mark, I'm going to ask you who the other two duos are, but I'm going to give you one of them because you'll never get it. So the first one is Abner Haynes and Johnny Robinson in 1960 for the Dallas Texans. I said that right. The Dallas Texans. But who is the other rookie duo with 1,000 plus scrimmage yards each?
I'm trying to think what running back rookie had a really good year.
They played for the Saints.
Kamara and Michael Thomas.
It's not Kamara and Thomas.
I'm not going to get it.
Reggie Bush and Marquise Colston.
Wow, I would have never gotten that.
I remember back when I started doing fantasy stuff, Marquise Colston was like a must-have on your roster every week.
Reggie Bush, it's funny, he had such a great college career, but I feel like it almost, I don't think people treat him as a bust in the NFL, but people don't really talk about his NFL career. He had some good years. I always remember later on when he was in Detroit, he was a great fantasy value. He was a 5th, 6th round pick who had years where he performed way better than that. So he had a better career than people remember.
Yeah, he only had 2 1,000-yard rushing seasons. One with Miami in 2011, one with Detroit in 2013. But really good receiving. But he had 742 receiving yards his rookie season. That's insane for a rookie.
He had a couple years around 400, caught 1 year over 500. The same year he had 1,000 in Detroit. Yeah, that Detroit year is really what I remember as being. I definitely had him in a big league that year.
Yeah. So the Giants ruined their number 1 overall pick. The Colts ruined their playoff shot. Mark, what are your takeaways from this game?
Yeah, I mean, the Colts just do this every year where they lose a heartbreaking game that impacts their playoff chances at the end of the year. This seems like the most inexcusable. The Giants, Drew Lock, 309 yards, 4 touchdowns. I think he had one of the best QBR games of the past like 20 years. I think it was like top 5 or something. Like Drew Lock just absolutely lit up the Gus Bradley defense. And Malik Neighbors caused me to lose a fantasy championship. So I'm pretty miserable about that. He absolutely killed me in a fantasy championship. 7 catches for 171 yards and 2 touchdowns. I had the Colts defense. They gave me negative points. I thought the Colts would show up and the Giants would stink it up like they have for however many months in a row now. Shocking, truly shocking stuff to see the Colts give up when they still had a path to the playoffs.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's keep rolling. Let's go to an overtime game in the division. The Atlanta Falcons losing to the Washington Commanders 24-30. And Jaden Daniels turned in another electric performance. He threw for 227 yards and 3 touchdowns. He did throw an interception, and he rushed for 127 yards on a season-high 16 carries. He passed RG3's rookie rushing record of 815 yards. He also has 31 total touchdowns. He's only the 4th rookie quarterback in NFL history to have 30 or more touchdowns. Mark, let's play the guessing game again. The other 3, any guesses?
What was the stat again?
Rookie quarterback with 30 or more total touchdowns.
Andrew Luck.
Andrew Luck was not one.
RG3?
Nope.
Man. Justin Herbert?
Herbert's one. He had 36. He's in first. The other mobile guys.
Mobile guys? I don't know. Give me one.
Cam Newton.
Yeah, that makes sense. Give me the other. Give me
Russell Wilson.
I wouldn't have got Russ. I could have got Cam.
I should have given you Russ and not Cam. Cam's probably the easier one there.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I kind of forgot how good Russ was right away. But yeah, no, I'm shocked RG3 didn't make the list. Yeah.
I'm going to have to look his up in a minute. But the story of this game really for me, though, isn't Jaden Daniels. It's Raheem Morris's time management. He committed crimes against humanity with his clock management. So, and it was at the end of both halves. So he had the ball before half at the 36-yard line. 46 seconds left in all 3 timeouts. They completed a pass to the 23 and did not call a timeout. 3 timeouts left, and they let the clock run from 38 seconds to 20 seconds before the snap. And then you walk out at the end of the game. They got the ball at the 19-yard line with 40 seconds and 2 timeouts in a tie game. You just need a field goal. They completed a pass to the 45-yard line and did not take a timeout and let the clock run from 32 seconds to 17 seconds. Like, I don't know if he thinks you can exchange timeouts for points at the end of regulation. I have no idea. That I don't understand how we're in 2024, about to be 2025, and there's still NFL head coaches that don't know how to manage a clock. Like, I said this before, just get a Madden player to sit in a booth. He'll do it for free tickets to talk into your ear and say, hey, take a timeout here, coach. Like, if you don't want to think about that, seriously hire some nerd from Harvard to do analytics and just have him in your ear telling you when to call timeouts. It's absurd. It cost Atlanta likely this game because they end up losing in overtime, and they have now lost control of their fate. They need a Tampa Bay loss versus New Orleans and a win against Carolina next week to get into the playoffs. So it probably costs them the postseason.
Everything about this game is pure nightmare fuel to the Philadelphia Eagles, and it has made the path the absolute worst possible case scenario in the history of a 2 seed of any major sport, in my opinion. I think it's an absolute disaster. I think the Green Bay Packers are going to be the best 7 seed in the history of sports. They're top 5 in DVOA. They're 5th in point differential. I think I saw their top 5 in EPA. I understand that they're 0-5 against playoff teams, but I would have much rather played the Washington Commanders in the first round than the Green Bay Packers. But Washington winning that game, Green Bay losing that game, so many things. Washington winning on a Hail Mary, Green Bay losing, even to us. If we let Green Bay win that game earlier in the year, we probably still win the division. We're probably still the 2 seed, but they would be the 6 seed or even the 5 seed. Everything that's happened has caused a nightmare scenario for Philly, where Washington is now the 6th seed. Green Bay is now the 7th seed. They will have to play Green Bay, who, in my opinion, I know it sounds crazy to people to say after last night when they lost to Minnesota in Minnesota. I still am more afraid of Green Bay than anybody in the NFC. I truly believe that when playoff time comes, Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love are not who I want to face. So I think having to face them in the first round is a disaster. And then if you beat them, you have to hope that the LA Rams beat Washington. Because if Washington beats the Rams in that scenario, then you're facing the winner of Tampa Bay, who owns us, and Minnesota, who will probably be 14-3 as the 5 seed, or Detroit, who will probably be 14-3 as the 5 seed. An abject disaster in every sense of the word. I am miserable. Yeah, that's what I have to say about Green Bay being the 7 and Washington being the 6, which is the only thing I care about from this game. And then, honestly, if you want to add another layer to that cake of awfulness, that layer would be Atlanta losing last night allows Tampa to make the playoffs, whereas we would have potentially maybe had a second-round matchup against the Falcons. I don't think they would have beat Minnesota, but yeah, I just think no matter how you look at it, and I know everybody's doing well, if you're scared, get a dog. We're better than everybody. We're as good as anybody. This team's better than the 2022 team. Well, the 2022 team had a bye and then had to face Daniel Jones and then immediately injured Brock Purdy. So I do think paths matter. There are plenty of teams that have gotten to the Super Bowl because of their path. There are plenty of teams who haven't gotten to the Super Bowl because of their path. I'm not saying that the Eagles aren't going to go get to the Super Bowl. If you made me predict, I probably would still predict them to do so. But I think the chances just got a whole lot worse.
In Philadelphia, what's the line if you're playing Green Bay?
I think 3.5.
3.5. What is it if you're playing Washington?
I think 8, 7.5, 8. I think Tampa's the hard one to guess. I don't know what Vegas thinks of Tampa because it's been so up and down with their injuries, and I would guess 5.5, 6. But Green Bay, I think, is 3.5. I think Washington's at least 7.5. It's over a touchdown.
I was going to say, I would have said Washington like 6.5 or 7.5. And I would have said Green Bay is probably like 4.5. So
Vegas really loves Green Bay. They have all year.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll get into some more of that stuff, perhaps later in the show when we get to Green Bay, but let's go to briefly. We don't normally talk Eagles, but they played Dallas this week. So we'll briefly touch on it. Eagles win 41-7, playing 2 backup quarterbacks. Mark, I thought this was crazy. I went and looked it up. In the last 5 years, the Cowboys and the Eagles have played 10 times. How many times do you think the game has featured the starting quarterback for both teams?
Oh, I don't know the number of that, but I know Jalen's only played 6 of the last 10, and Dak's only played, I think, 4 of the last 10.
It's been starter versus starter 3 times.
Yeah.
It's been Cowboys starter versus Eagles backup 3 times. Eagles starter versus Cowboys backup 3 times, and then yesterday was 2 backups for the first time. So it's kind of crazy that we haven't. This game is cursed in terms of quarterback play, but the Eagles win. They clinch the 2 seed. They clinch the division, and that makes it the 20th straight season without a repeat division winner, which is the longest streak in NFL history. I think I saw the next longest streak active is 5. So it's crazy how the NFC East has had so much parity over the years. But quick takeaways from this game.
Yeah, it's I was pretty worried about this game, which was dumb. With Dallas without CeeDee Lamb, it's a completely different team. But the Eagles just forced turnover after turnover after turnover. It felt like, and obviously they made enough happen on offense. Saquon 31 carries for 167. But the Dallas. Does this change the Mike McCarthy conversation at all? It seemed like we were heading towards a spot where that conversation was over and Mike McCarthy was coming back. Does Jerry Jones getting taunted by Eagles fans about how they love the job he's doing and then having to sit there as the Eagles beat us 41-7? Does that change his mind at all, or is he just on another planet and is unaware of reality? I thought the best part of this kind of late season surge for Dallas was that they were keeping McCarthy. My only concern is we might have blew them out so much last night they have to change that course of action.
Yeah, I don't think they do. I mean, I don't think you probably change the plan based on that. I certainly hope they do. I would love to see Mike McCarthy back for another season in Dallas.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. And I think we will. I think they probably won't fire him.
Yeah. All right, let's get into the Sunday slate.
Real quick, I did forget to mention on the Giants game, they lost their number 1 pick. I can't believe I didn't mention that as like my main takeaway, but they're now the number 4 pick as opposed to the number 1 pick. The quarterbacks, Shador and Ward, probably the only first round guys. They'll probably go top 2. Maybe there'll be some trading to get up to that top 2. So the Giants will probably now have to give up assets to go and take a quarterback who I don't think either of which are really worth taking in the top 2, letting alone trade up assets to give up to get to the top 2. So Giants going to Giant.
Yeah, the only thing that would make me happier than the Giants drafting Shador Sanders or Cam Ward is them trading up to do so.
Yeah, I agree.
So by the way, I just looked it up because I forgot to earlier, but RG3 had 27 touchdowns his rookie season.
Yeah, so, and touchdowns are probably up just in general. Points are up from that era. That's a little bit earlier than the other guys we mentioned. I guess Cam and Russ probably weren't too far after, but
yeah. Okay, let's get into the Sunday slate. The Jets travel to Buffalo and get blown out 40-14. Josh Allen threw for 2 touchdowns. He ran for another as the Bills locked up the 2 seed. This game was close in the first half. It was 12-0 at halftime before it got out of hand. Aaron Rodgers was awful in this game. Went 12 of 18 for 112 yards with 2 interceptions, 4 sacks, and a 1.2 QBR. My favorite thing is he was even flagged for an unnecessary roughness after an interception. Your guy, Gregory Rousseau, was awesome. He had a 4th down stop. He had a half a sack. He tipped a ball that led to an interception. Josh Allen's rushing touchdown gave him 65 total in his career, which ties Thurman Thomas for the most in Bills history. Thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I was just looking up Gregory Rousseau to see how many sacks he has on the year. 8. I've seen a lot of talk about how impactful he's been in the running and passing game. But yeah, you mentioned how bad Aaron Rodgers was. He put up a 1.2 QBR in that game, which is the lowest QBR game since Davis Mills. He put up 0.8 in 2021. And another interesting stat, Week 17 has produced both the highest QBR game, Lamar Jackson at 99.8, and lowest QBR game, Aaron Rodgers 1.2 of the last 3 years.
Yeah, great stuff there from Aaron Rodgers. You love to see it.
And
go ahead.
Florio put out an article today saying that the Eagles should try to hire McCarthy if Dallas fires him. I have a take about this. I think Pro Football Talk, once upon a time, was a very useful blog, very useful website. Mike Florio, I think, at one time probably had some sources. I think Mike Florio has really jumped the shark. If you look at his Twitter and him getting in arguments about his articles and defending his reporting, and then Schefter came out and really, really dropped a bomb on him. I'm not sure if you saw that, but over the weekend, Florio put out an article about how badly Pete Carroll wants the Bears job and how he thinks Pete Carroll will get a lot of interest from NFL teams looking for a head coach. And Schefter replied, I forget the exact reply, but none of what you have written here is fact. It is all false. Like, I wish you good day or something, like very just like, you suck at your job. Stop reporting fake news. Like it was really crazy. But yeah, I think you could probably just not take Mike Florio seriously.
Yeah. All right, let's keep rolling on to the Las Vegas Raiders at the New Orleans Saints. The Raiders win 25-10. Brock Bowers had 7 catches for 77 yards as he rewrote the record books. He broke Mike Ditka's rookie tight end record, going from 1,076, the old record, to 1,144. He broke Puka Nakua's receptions record, going from 105, the old record, to 108. And he still has a game left to improve on those records and potentially put them out of reach for a long time, especially for a tight end. Spencer Rattler on the Saints side had a good first half. He went 11 of 13 for 146 yards and a touchdown, no sacks. But in the second half, he fell apart. He went 9 of 23 for 72 yards, 2 interceptions, and 3 sacks. Now, it's worth mentioning he got no help. He was the team's leading rusher with only 46 yards, but New Orleans is in a bad spot. It's not like the Raiders are in a great spot, but the Raiders take this one.
Yeah, I mean, they've won 2 games in a row here. Took themselves from the number 1 pick to now. I just had it up. Let me. The number 8 pick for the Raiders. So they went for the number 1 pick to the number 8 pick in 2 weeks. That's a massive jump in this draft. And you look at Aiden O'Connell. 3 of the last 4 weeks, 340 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, 257 yards, no touchdowns, no picks, 242 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. 3 of the last 4 weeks, O'Connell's been really good for the Raiders. It would be really funny, really, really funny if the Raiders decide to go with Aiden O'Connell again for another season because of how he played against the Saints and the Jags in week 16 and week 17.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to get into the QB conversations later in the offseason about what some of these teams should do, because it's kind of a rough offseason to need a quarterback. But the Eagles would like to remind everyone that Kenny Pickett will be available via trade this offseason.
Tanner McKee, untouchable. So.
Yes. So, all right, let's keep going. Carolina at Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay wins 48-14. And Mark, nobody wants to win the NFC South. After a loss at Dallas, the ball was in the Falcons' court, who blew it on Sunday Night Football. And so since Atlanta lost, Tampa wins the division and secures the 4 seed with a win against New Orleans next week. That's all they got to do. Baker Mayfield threw for 359 yards and 5 touchdowns. Mike Evans caught 2 of those and had 97 yards. So he only needs 85 yards to keep my favorite streak in sports alive with his 11th straight 1,000-yard season. I did think that this was still an encouraging performance from Bryce Young, despite his stat line. He's 15-28 for 203 yards and 2 touchdowns, 5 sacks, fumbled twice, but there was no run game. They had 31 yards rushing. He was pressured on 69% of his dropbacks, but he led 2 first-half touchdown drives. He led a field goal drive before half. The field goal was missed, but he got him into field goal range. So I thought it was an encouraging performance still from Bryce Young. It was an awesome performance from Bucky Irving, who had 20 carries for 113 yards, and he had 77 receiving yards. He now has 1,000 rushing yards this season. He's proven himself as a receiving threat, and he was taken 125th overall in the draft. I had him 74 on my big board. Really liked Bucky Irving. He was my running back too. So I'm happy to see him doing well, and Tampa now controls their destiny when it comes to the playoffs.
He might have been my RB1. I'll have to go check that. I probably had him right around that same number as you overall because I ranked all the running backs super low here. But yeah, Tampa, I have no idea what to make of Tampa. I went all in on Tampa before the Dallas game, saying I thought they were the 7th best team in the NFL, saying I thought that they would beat Minnesota in a playoff game if they faced off in the first round. And then they go out and they lose on the road to a Dallas team that goes out and loses 41-7 the week after it. But the Bucs looked every bit like the team that we saw against the Chargers in LA a couple weeks ago here against Carolina. And I have no idea what to expect of Tampa on a week-to-week basis. I would say that the 5 seed having to play Tampa is going to be dangerous if they show up at all like they showed up against the Chargers and the Panthers. Obviously, if they show up the way they did against Dallas, then they'll lose. But I can already kind of picture Tampa as the 4 seed, as like if they played Detroit, I think they'd be like a legitimate 4.5 point dog at home in that game. If they played Minnesota, I think it'd probably be around that 3 number, 2.5 or 3. And I think Tampa would beat Minnesota in a first round playoff match. But the last time I went in on Tampa, they made me look dumb. So they'll probably do the same here.
You had 5 running backs in the 90s. Bucky Irving was technically your number 2 behind Audric Estime, but you had 5 guys between 91 and 98 overall.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was really low on this class in terms of, because I thought there was a lot of guys around the same level. Yeah. So I didn't want to take any of them too high. But Bucky was the guy that I kind of geeked out about in the offseason.
Yeah. Okay, let's keep rolling here. Let's go to Jacksonville, where the Tennessee Titans lose to the Jags 20-13. Very meaningless game. I will just say Brian Thomas Jr. had 7 receptions for 91 yards and a touchdown. He also had a rushing attempt for 18 yards. Here's another chance, Mark, another guessing game. He is one of 4 rookies in the Super Bowl era to have 1,100 receiving yards and 10 or more receiving touchdowns. Who are the other 3?
Jefferson.
He's actually not one.
Wow. I suck at this. Puka?
Nope.
All right, I give up.
Okay, it was Odell Beckham Jr., Jamar Chase, and Randy Moss.
They all made sense. I should have gotten all of them.
Yeah,
I'm bad at this.
you should have. You are bad. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Brian Thomas Jr., the number 4 fantasy wide receiver right now as a rookie. That's wild. That is pretty insane stuff.
Yeah. Justin Jefferson had 1,400 yards, but only 7 touchdowns. So he didn't hit the double-digit touchdowns. Let's see. Puka Nacua had 1,486 yards, but only 6 touchdowns. So they both missed it by virtue of touchdowns.
Who are the only receivers this year to have had a better fantasy season than Brian Thomas Jr.?
A.J. Brown.
Nah, he missed too many games.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about the injuries. Shoot. I'm going to be bad at this because I don't really care. Justin Jefferson's probably one.
Jefferson was one, the wide receiver 2.
He was wide receiver 2.
There's the guy who was number 1 was actually number 1 by a wide margin this year.
Let me think.
You just said his name.
Jamar Chase.
Yeah.
And CeeDee Lamb.
No, CeeDee Lamb's 5th, but 3rd is Amon-Ra.
Okay, yeah. Makes sense.
Jamar has been the fantasy MVP this season. I'd say he's averaging 24.1 points per week. Justin Jefferson is having an amazing year at number 2, 19.7 points per week, just to give a reference of how far ahead Jamar is than everybody at wide receiver. It's pretty insane.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's keep rolling here. Let's go to Miami at Cleveland. I lost my spot for a second. Miami at Cleveland. Miami wins 20-3. They win without Tua and keep their postseason hopes alive. They still need help, though. They can get the final wild card spot if Denver loses to Kansas City, who is likely resting starters with the 1 seed clinched, and then they need to win over the Jets. So you would assume they beat the Jets. It'll come down to how Denver fares against KC minus Patrick Mahomes, probably. Tyler Huntley played well in place of Tua, though. He went 22 of 26 for 225 yards and a touchdown. He also rushed for 52 yards and a touchdown, and he had no help. Miami had 22 yards on 20 carries outside of Tyler Huntley. So Miami's playoff hopes narrowly stay alive. Thoughts on this one?
Yeah, Miami needs Carson Wentz. The biggest Carson Wentz fans in the world are in South Beach this week. The Miami Dolphins, if Carson Wentz can go out and beat Denver, then all Miami has to do is beat the Jets on the road. I do think I'm seeing this line for the first time. Actually, betting in Week 18 is always wonky, and the odds are always a bit wonky with what teams need and such. I will say the Dolphins being -2.5 at the Jets, where Aaron Rodgers played the way he did and got benched for Tyrod. That feels like an insane line to me. Why is that not -6.5? It's going on at the same time as the Broncos Chiefs game that they'll need to know the outcome of. Like, I don't think if they're up in the second half, they're just going to stop trying if that's a blow. Like, I actually think that's an interesting bet that I'm going to make this week. Miami -2.5 at the Jets, because I think they're going to try no matter what. And I actually think that Kansas City and Carson Wentz probably keep it close with Denver. Denver seems to play a ton of close games. That spread is like Denver -9, which I also feel like seems extreme to me. But yeah, just a little kind of Week 18 betting primer there.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get to the game that crushed the Eagles' hopes for a 1 seed, and likely gets the Eagles Green Bay in week 1 of the playoffs. Like you mentioned earlier, Green Bay loses to Minnesota 25-27. And Sam Darnold sliced through this Packers defense. He threw for 377 yards and 3 touchdowns with only 1 interception. And he wasn't just a Justin Jefferson merchant. 4 other players had at least 4 receptions in this one. Now, Green Bay did make it look interesting late. They scored back-to-back touchdowns to pull it to a 2-point game with 2:18 left. But Darnold completed 3 passes on the final drive versus only 1 run play to move the chains twice and end the game. Jordan Love didn't fare so well in this game. He only threw for 45 yards in the first half. He did start to figure out how to handle Brian Flores' exotic pressure looks late, but it was too late. So Minnesota will play Detroit next week at Detroit. And with a win, they get the 1 seed. They win the division. With a loss, they would drop all the way to the 5 seed. So that's going to be a huge game on Sunday Night Football next week. Minnesota at Detroit. And actually, their result makes Detroit's game tonight against the 49ers meaningless And I would assume Dan Campbell will not. Dan Campbell's too much of a tough guy mentality to like consider pulling guys out. But it might be the smart move, especially for a team that's so injured already.
Yeah, I would say don't watch the game tonight. Like, it has absolutely no impact on anything. Hang out with your friends, hang out with your family, go watch a college basketball game, go to an NBA game. I don't know. Don't do anything but watch the Lions 49ers tonight. It's a meaningless game. But yeah, this is like I said earlier, just a supremely disappointing outcome. I get it. Everybody's going to pile on the Packers. I'm seeing all of Eagles Twitter be like, see, you shouldn't be afraid of the Packers. And I get it that they've went 0-5 in their 5 big games. I choose to be a little bit more positive on the fact that they went 11-0 in the other 11 games. They've beaten the Rams, they've beaten the Texans, they've beaten a couple other decent teams. And also, if you dive into those 5 playoff losses, 3 were in September, 5 playoff team losses to the 3 top teams in the NFC. 3 were in September. 1 was in Brazil. 1 was Jordan Love rushing back from an injury so he could play a division rival. And then 1 was this game where, just to be honest, the Vikings had a lot more to play for in this game than the Packers did. And I'm not saying that excuses everything, but I do think that there's a difference of motivation when one team's playing for the difference of being the 6 or the 7 seed, and one team is playing to keep their hopes alive of winning the division and be the 1 seed in the entire conference and retain home field advantage. So if it's Minnesota, Green Bay again in the playoffs, down the line, if that were to happen, I think it would be a very similar spread where it's about a pick 'em. And I think Green Bay would win the game. I really do. Once playoff time comes, I think Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love kind of, you look at the Vikings, they're 9-1 in 1-score games. And I know Green Bay maybe made this a 1-score game late, so maybe you should take that out. It should really be 8-1. The Packers, on the other hand, have lost a ton of their 1-score games. You look at 4 of their 5 losses have been by 5 or less, and they've all been to the Eagles, Lions, or Vikings. I still think the Packers are going to be just fine. I think they have a top 7 quarterback, a top 5 head coach, a top 7 running back, a top 5 O-line, and a defense that didn't look good in this game at all, but has shown at times this year that they can at least be, top 5, top 10 unit. I know that they were number 1 between like week 8 to week 16 or something. I saw on DVOA, but I think Green Bay will be just fine. And I almost think this loss will throw people off the scent a little bit more and make them a little bit more dangerous. My only hope, truly my only hope, is that Washington loses to Dallas next week. They're only a 3-point favorite in that game. Maybe Washington won't care too much about the difference between the 6 and the 7 seed, although they should. Green Bay would have won the game if they didn't turn the ball over in the first half. I think they beat the Vikings in the playoffs. Thank you, Ben Gunter. I agree with you. I don't know if they would have won that game without turning the ball over, but it would have obviously been a easier task for them. And I do think it was a momentum killer. First drive of the game, Green Bay's moving the ball, and then you fumble on a first down run by Jacobs there. I do think that was a momentum killer. And then as for the other side, people are going to say that I'm poo-pooing them. I don't care. I think we should all be rooting our hearts out for the Minnesota Vikings next week against Detroit to be the 1 seed. I look at going to Minnesota equally as hosting Detroit. I think that's equally as hard of a game. I think I'd actually rather go to Minnesota than host Detroit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I could get on board with that. I think
It's
I would be a little concerned about the way Flores plays defense against the Eagles, getting protections sorted and things. But yeah, I don't know. I think I'm with you, but I am not positive. I'd have to dive into it some more. So, okay, let's keep going. That's all the Sunday games. We're going to briefly get through the Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday games because apparently the NFL plays every day now. Chargers at Patriots. Chargers win 40-7. Chargers scored on 8 of 10 possessions. Ladd McConkey had 8 catches for 94 yards and 2 touchdowns. He topped 1,000 yards. He also passed Keenan Allen for the most rookie receptions in Chargers history and tied Odell Beckham Jr. for the most consecutive 50-plus receiving yard games in a rookie season. I like seeing McConkey do well because it confirms a prior I had about him for the draft. I really liked him. Drake May took a headshot scrambling near the sideline in this game. I didn't like seeing that. One, you're a 3-win team in a meaningless game. Protect yourself. Two, he was 3 yards short of the marker. He had no chance to get the first down. Like, just protect yourself. He did come back into the game, which also seems a little crazy in terms of managing a young franchise quarterback that's getting pummeled and just took a headshot. I did not like how the Patriots handled that. I didn't like that he put himself in that situation. And, I think Drake May is really good. I just want his career to last long enough for a team to get built around him.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And with the Chargers, you're either going to be the 5 or the 6 seed. And I cannot emphasize how massive that difference is. With the 5 seed, you're going to Houston. With the 6 seed, you're going to Baltimore. That is a much, much different thing. And with how they scheduled week 18, you have the Steelers playing Saturday night. So if the Steelers lose that game to Cincinnati, who will be playing for since he is favored in that game, Cincy -3 in Pittsburgh, since he will be playing for their playoff lives since Denver plays the next day. But if Pittsburgh loses that game, if you're the Chargers, I think you have to go balls to the wall and play all your guys against the Raiders to get the 5 seed, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're probably looking at like a 10-point swing in the line if you're playing Houston versus playing Baltimore. You would be favored against Houston. You would be an underdog against Baltimore. So you definitely go try to win that game, in my opinion.
And then if you're Pittsburgh, I also think you should be trying to win that game on Saturday night for sure.
Yeah. So good Saturday night game this week, hopefully. So
yeah, for sure.
Okay, let's keep going here. Let's go Denver at Cincinnati. Cincinnati wins in overtime 30-24, and this was a T. Higgins game. He had 11 catches for 131 yards and 3 touchdowns. Jamar Chase also had 9 for 102, and Mike Gesicki had 10 for 86. Joe Burrow was sacked 7 times, but he also threw for 412 yards and 3 touchdowns. And the Bengals took the lead with 1:29 left in the game. Denver answered with a 7-play, 70-yard drive with only 1 timeout to tie the game on a 4th and 1, 25-yard touchdown pass. 4 possessions in overtime featured a missed field goal from Cincinnati, 2 3-and-outs from Denver before a Cincinnati touchdown finally ended the game. And so Denver needs to beat Kansas City in week 18 to get the final wild card spot. Kansas City has already secured the 1 seed. It's been reported they will rest starters, which I'm sure they will. If Denver loses, Miami beating the Jets would give them that spot. If both teams lose, then Cincinnati would be in if they beat Pittsburgh. And then if all 3 teams lose, Denver is in again. So Denver is the likely team. There's a lot of dominoes that have to fall for Cincy to get in. I'll be pulling for Cincinnati to get in, though.
Yeah, and you look at the parlay of what it would take for Bengals to get in. I'm sure a lot of Bengals fans will be putting this in. I think gambling's legal in Ohio. So plus 1790 would be what that comes out to for the Bengals money line at the Steelers, Jets money line against the Dolphins, and then the Chiefs money line at the Broncos. And I will just say the NFL wants that. The NFL would kill for Josh Allen, Joe Burrow. In the first round. So if that Dolphins-Jets game or that Chiefs-Broncos game is close, I would watch for some funny business there, potentially.
All right, let's go Arizona at Los Angeles. The Rams win 13-9, and the Rams defense is playing well, and they have a lot of young pieces. Braden Fisk had his 3rd career multi-sack game. Again, he's a rookie defensive tackle. Jared Verse had a 4th down stop and 7 pressures. 4 of them were quick pressures under 2.5 seconds. Safety Cameron Kinchins picked off Kyler Murray late in the game. This was the Rams' 3rd straight game holding an opponent to single-digit points. They held San Fran to 6, the Jets to 9, and then the Cardinals to 9. Now, it's also worth pointing out they failed to score more than 20 in all 3 of those games, too. So the defense playing well, the offense is not as they head into the playoffs. On the Cardinals side, Trey McBride had an awesome game, 12 catches for 123 yards and a touchdown. Marvin Harrison Jr. had 6 for 96. Any thoughts on this game?
The Rams offense has serious problems. I mean, you look at the box score of this game against the Cardinals, and it's kind of shocking. that they lost it. You know, they were outgained by 130 yards. They had 20 less plays than the Cardinals. They had 12 less first downs than the Cardinals. They had, I guess the issue is the turnovers. Arizona had 2 turnovers. Rams had 0, and someone said Eagles offense put up 37 on the Rams defense. It does seem like the Rams defense has turned a bit of a corner the last couple of weeks, but I do think that's partially because of the opponents they've played, as opposed to when they played Philly and Buffalo, and their defense has allowed a lot of points. I'm just saying, I think Washington is primed to beat the Rams. I do not think the Rams are going to win a playoff game. I think if it's Green Bay, they'll definitely lose to Green Bay. And if it's Washington, we will be rooting really hard for the Rams as Eagles fans. But I really do think Washington's a better team right now overall than LA, which stinks.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to Thursday night football, where Seattle beat Chicago 6-3. And honestly, with all the Wednesday games and Christmas, I forgot this game was on, and I have nothing to say about it. Do you?
6-3. Here's what I'll say. Everyone loves to tweet about and get mad about 6-3 games and low scoring games, especially when they're in prime time. In my opinion, if a football game ends and one team has a chance, or a football game is ending, I should say, and one team has the ball with a chance to tie or win, I don't think the game was that bad. Is that a hot take? Is that a bad take?
I mean, it can be an exciting end and still have been a sloppy, boring game.
That's fair. But I think like a football game that ends with one team with a chance to tie or win is more entertaining than like 99% of pieces of entertainment out there.
Yeah.
And
that's fair.
My other thing is, and I saw someone tweet about this a couple months ago and being like, I think red zone has broken the brain for some, because we see all these scoring touchdowns and it's like, oh, every game should be like that. So that when we get these 6-3, 12-6, 9-6 games, we freak out. These games have been happening forever. These games have been happening our whole lives. Go look at the average total of a game in the early 2000s and look at it now. There's so much more scoring. So every time we have a game like this, the NFL Twitter, NFL media loves to do quarterback plays in a bad place. The product is bad right now. And it's like, I think you could pick games like that every year and do that, especially from my childhood, which I think a lot of the people saying that about this current era are pining for the early 2000s, mid 2000s. If you were there, you watched bad quarterback play often. Like it wasn't like that. It wasn't like there being 10 to 12 bad quarterbacks is a new phenomenon.
Yeah, I can enjoy like a defensive slugfest too, as long as like it's good defensive play, not bad offensive play. And there is a difference. And I didn't watch this game, so I can't tell you which one it was, but
it's probably a mix. It was probably
yeah. Okay, let's get to the Christmas Day games, which is the stupidest thing the NFL's ever done, putting games on Wednesday. But the Chiefs beat the Steelers 29-10. And I do want to point out, Mark, that on a week where Russell Wilson threw 0 touchdown passes, Mason Rudolph, Mitchell Trubisky, and Kenny Pickett all threw touchdowns. So all 3 former Steelers quarterbacks got a touchdown. Wilson had none. It's also worth pointing out that Justin Fields has triple the EPA per play of Russell Wilson this season. He has a higher success rate, and Wilson has led the Steelers to 3 straight losses against playoff teams where he's thrown for an average of 177 yards per game. In fact, if you remove the Bengals game, which was a shootout, he has thrown for only 196 yards per game over the last 7 weeks, Bengals game excluded. The Steelers have lost 3 straight. I said at the time I didn't like the switch from Justin Fields to Russell Wilson. That kind of looked like a bad take for a while. It looks like a good take again.
I agree.
Awesome. I thought we might have to argue about it. Actually, I'd take that back. I knew you would agree with that. But Pittsburgh has to beat Cincinnati and hope Baltimore loses to Cleveland to be able to win their division. Otherwise, they're going to be in the wild card. And on the Chiefs side, they clinch the 1 seed. They're heating up on both sides of the ball as they push into the postseason with the bye. And then it feels like we do this at the end of every year. We have got to do record watch, but Kelsey became the 3rd tight end to reach 1,000 career catches. He also caught his 77th touchdown, which makes him the Chiefs franchise leader for receiving touchdowns. Your thoughts on this game?
think the Chiefs are looking like the team people wanted them to look like. The offense looks a lot more capable. The defense is not giving up any Aiden O'Connell type games anymore. They look like the best team in football quite clearly to me, and the team that I think is going to win the Super Bowl, unfortunately. But as for the other side of the ball with Pittsburgh, Justin Fields 4-2, Russell Wilson 6-4. That's simple.
Yeah. So, okay, let's get into the last game. Baltimore at Houston. Baltimore wins 31-2. They handle Houston easily. The Texans stink. Last year, they won 10 games and a playoff game, and they have taken such a step back this year. They're going to host a playoff game, and they'll have a chance to win said playoff game because their likely opponent is Pittsburgh. But it's very disappointing that they didn't take a leap this season in the second year with Stroud and with DeMeco Ryans. On the Ravens side, I don't think there's anything noteworthy to say in this game other than if the Ravens beat Cleveland, they'll win the division next week. And so that's something to watch for. But I don't have a lot of takes on this game other than just the Texans are really disappointing this year.
Yeah, I have a big bet on Baltimore to win that division. So I am very much hoping for no tomfoolery in the last week of the year. That was one of the better bets I've ever made at plus money for Baltimore to win the division when they were like a game and a half behind Pittsburgh. But I was able to seek out and look. Pittsburgh had three games in 10 days at Ravens, at Eagles, Chiefs at home. And I knew that they weren't going to win any of those. So here we are. That was a good bet by me. But Pittsburgh needs to put Fields back in the game and then I would be hammering Pittsburgh to beat Houston in the first round. Whoever plays Houston, I will be betting against in the first round. I kind of prefer that to be the Chargers. I think the Chargers are better than the Steelers at this point. Is that wrong?
No.
You would take the Chargers too? Yeah. I think the Chargers are better than the Steelers. I think the defense is playing just as good as the Steelers at this point. So I would say if the Chargers play in Houston, I think that line is like Chargers minus. I think honestly, they're probably both around 3. The Chargers and the Steelers, I think, are probably both around a field goal favorite in Houston in round 1, and I would bet on either of them. I'd prefer it to be the Chargers.
Yeah, we got a comment here asking if Stefanski is fired after this season for the Browns. What is your thought?
I have no idea. I honestly think we could take like just a quick second and just go around to all of the teams that are on the fence of firing their coach. I think that's the one that I have no idea. I think no. If I had to guess,
here's my thing: you can fire Stefanski, but there's not a sane person who will take that job this offseason unless you also cut Deshaun Watson, because nobody is stepping into that mess knowing that their future is tied to Deshaun Watson. There is a much larger problem than Kevin Stefanski, and so to me, that's what we got to get rid of. We got to move on from him.
The only thing that makes any sense to me, and it doesn't really make that much sense, they have Vrabel in the building right now as he's like a, I don't even know, assistant coach. He's on the sideline. So he's not just some consultant who's not dealing with anything, but he was on the sideline recently. Maybe if you want to keep Vrabel in the building, you get rid of Stefanski. But yeah, Joe Chick's commenting about Raheem Morris. Raheem Morris has cost the Falcons multiple games this year. He was truly a terrible hire, which I was loud about at the time. I didn't get the hire. I wouldn't have hired a DC. I didn't think that he had earned that job at all. The other jobs that are kind of up in the air. Does Miami fire McDaniel? I think no, probably.
Yeah, probably not.
Does New England fire Mayo? I lean no.
They shouldn't, but they shouldn't have hired him either. Like, if you get rid of him, it's probably a net positive, but this team's so bad. What did you expect?
Zach Taylor? I think probably not. He should be.
He should have been fired 4 years ago.
He should be, but I don't think he will be.
Probably not.
I don't think he will be. Steichen shouldn't be, and I don't think will be.
Yeah, same.
Doug will be gone. I don't think the Titans fire Callahan. The Raiders should fire Pierce, but I don't think they will.
Yeah.
someone commented the Cardinals. Did the Cardinals fire Gannon? I think they should. I don't think they will.
Yeah.
McCarthy, I think they should. I don't think they will. Dable is the opposite. I think they shouldn't, but I think they're going to. I think they're going to fire him, but I don't think they should.
Yeah, I wouldn't fire Dable.
And I'm trying to think, is there anyone else? No, I think that finishes the list. Yeah, San Fran's not going to get rid of Shanahan. So, yeah, that's the list. I actually think it's not going to be quite as many jobs as people are expecting.
Yeah, well, we'll be back next week to recap that because we'll have Black Monday. Black Monday will be ongoing next week as we record. So that'll be interesting. We can break some news on the pod. So that's going to do it for our recaps this week. Mark, for my final thoughts, I'm going to tell you who should win MVP and Offensive and Defensive Rookie of the Year, and you can tell me if you agree.
All right.
MVP should go to Lamar Jackson. Josh Allen's going to win it. Lamar's thrown for 220 more yards, 11 more touchdowns, and 2 less interceptions. Lamar has rushed for 320 more yards. Overall, he has 3 more touchdowns than Josh Allen because Josh Allen has the receiving touchdowns. Also, 6 of Josh Allen's touchdowns have come via QB sneak. And so if you want to discount those, do so if you would like. But Lamar Jackson has outplayed Josh Allen this year. He should be the MVP. I know you agree with that one.
Absolutely. It's an outrage that he's not.
Okay. Brock Bowers should win Offensive Rookie of the Year. No disrespect to Jaden Daniels. He's been awesome. But Brock Bowers is 6th in the NFL in receiving yards as a rookie tight end with no quarterback. He's first among tight ends. Like, how often does somebody come in and legitimately be the best player at their position as a rookie? Jaden Daniels has been great. He's not the best quarterback in the NFL.
No.
What Daniels has done is amazing, but 3 other quarterbacks have done it, 30-plus touchdowns. No tight end has ever done what Brock Bowers has done. He would get my vote for Offensive Rookie of the Year if I had a vote to cast.
I agree. I'm not as passionate as I was. I think I talked about this like a month or 2 ago on this show. Jaden has been really good these last couple of weeks, but I would give it to Bowers if I was voting.
Yeah. Okay. So we're 2 for 2. This one you might not like. Jared Verse should win Defensive Rookie of the Year. I would have leaned Quinyon a few weeks ago. Quinyon's had a rough couple of weeks. And I feel like if you're going to have no interceptions as a rookie defensive back, you've also got to have like the no touchdowns allowed thing. And he's allowed 1 each of the last 2 weeks. Meanwhile, Jared Verse has continued piling up pressures. He trails only Myles Garrett, Jonathan Grenard, and Trey Hendrickson for pressures this season. So unfortunately, and this is also, you should just notice, people, I'm not being an Eagles homer here, not giving it to Jaden Daniels, because I also wouldn't give it to Quinyon. I would vote for Jared Verse.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it's like 50-50 to me. But you're right. Quinyon hasn't been quite as good the last couple of weeks. So probably should go to Verse. I think it will. Like almost unanimously go to Verse. Couple comments here. Joe Chick said over under 5.5 opening head coaching spots. I counted 4 definite ones, and then I'm struggling to kind of figure out the other ones here. So that's probably a good over under. I'll go over just because I feel like we always end up with more than we.
There's
think.
Always a surprise firing or 2.
Yeah, maybe that's Zach Taylor. I don't know if that's that big of a surprise, but yeah, I'll go over. I think it's 6 or 7. It's somewhere between 5 or 7, but I'll say it's 6. I'll say 6 open head coaching spots. And then Anthony commented Saquon MVP. Anthony, I love you. You're a favorite listener here, maybe. But that's designed to anger me. Saquon had like 25 carries for 45 yards to close out that Washington game. He's the 4th most valuable player on our own offense, but that's a whole other conversation.
All right. Before Anthony and Mark get into a fight here.
I love you, Anthony. You're the man.
Let's get out of here. Mark, I gave you my final thoughts. Do you got any final thoughts you want to fire off?
Final thoughts. I'll just do the college football playoff bets that are coming up here Tuesday and Wednesday. So I got tomorrow. Wow, I didn't realize it was the 30th. Wow, that was a little bit of a wake up call for me there. But on the 31st, I like Boise to keep it close with Penn State. Not super confident in that one. That would be my least confident of these. I think Texas rolls Arizona State. Texas is going to beat the crap out of them, -12. I might alt line that up to 19.5. I think Texas wins by 4+ touchdowns there. Hook 'em. Sorry, Shane. And then Oregon, give me the Ducks +2.5. I know that Ohio State looked great last week, and I think they are great. But I think there's a chance Oregon might just be the best team in the country and one of the best teams in recent memory, and we keep disrespecting them. And then last but not least, most importantly, go Irish at 8:45 on New Year's Day against Georgia. Only like pretty much a pick 'em there, only +1, +1.5. I'm starting to believe and starting to buy in. I think they're going to beat Georgia somehow, some way.
It sucks. It kind of sucks for Oregon and Georgia that they got the top 2 seeds and they have the 2 hardest games this week. Like, you would much rather be Texas or Penn State playing Arizona State and Boise State than Oregon or Georgia having to play Notre Dame and Ohio State.
And you think about it this way too, Notre Dame should have been ranked above Penn State on the college football playoff ranking. They decided that they weren't going to punish Penn State for losing in the conference championship, which I think is ridiculous. The game exists and you can be rewarded for winning it. There should also be consequences for losing it. It's not like we should just pretend that the loser didn't play the game and the winner was the only team who played. If Notre Dame jumps Penn State one spot, which they were one spot behind them the entire year, and then they lost the game and didn't move, Notre Dame jumps them. Notre Dame's playing Arizona State right now instead of having to go play Georgia down south. I'm confident. I think they're going to get the job done, but man, do I wish I had Penn State's path to do it.
Maybe Notre Dame should get in a conference.
That's what it's trending to. And it's unfortunate because I hate the whole conference thing and like rooting for the other teams in your conference to help the conference look good. And I kind of hate all that. I like Notre Dame just being like, we play our games and judge us off that, and we get to go make our money from NBC that the conferences don't want to give us. But that's a whole other. We got screwed in the playoff rankings so much that I'm at the point where just go join the ACC.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to do it. Thank you guys for joining us for episode number 183 of Chalk Talk. If you enjoy what you heard on the show, and we know that you do, smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next episode. Drop us a 5-star rating and review wherever you stream your podcast. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Shane Heff NFL. He is at Mark Henry Jr. And we will catch you guys next year.